Hi, welcome to KJ and Tony Moves to France. This is our second update since returning to the US from France, and today we're going to respond to some of the questions about our experiences while we were there.
We had so many questions from our viewers. We actually had over 600 comments. Wow. I think maybe 2 or 3 of those comments were negative. All of the other comments were super encouraging and supportive. So first of all, we'd like to say thank you for all of your encouragement and feedback and support. It's been so incredibly helpful, especially for me as someone who experienced the homesickness. That was just to hear other people's experiences and sharing that this was normal and that I'm not somehow like this weak person because I experienced this. And it was a combination, like we've shared in previous videos, between the homesickness and then getting physically ill. So one thing that I would like to make clear, and I think we both would like to make clear, is that we are not giving up. Like, this is not a one and done sort of, experience, that we plan on retiring to France and that we did not do this on a whim. There were some comments about, I think, a couple of the negative ones. And isn't that interesting? Like, our brains are, I just shared about this on my other channel. Like, our brains as humans are designed so that we hyper focus on the negative, right? Because that's like the threat to our environment is the negative. So we have like 600 comments that are positive and we get a few that are negative, and I'm all like hyper focused on the negative sometimes instead of the positive. But there are some people that express that this was a failure and along those lines. And even though you could classify it as a failure, there's that saying that if at first you don't succeed, try again. And so we've not given up on our dream,
right,
on our hope to retire to France. And this time we are going to be, not that we weren't prepared before, because that's the thing. We put a lot of time and effort into this. We thought about it, we planned it, we mapped it out, so to speak. But there were a few things that I certainly did not anticipate. I did not anticipate in a million years that I was going to experience homesickness, that especially to the degree that I did. And I think that it was the combination of the homesickness and getting physically ill. So just to clarify that we still intend to move and retire to France. The timing of that is the thing that is sort of like the gray area right now. All right, another issue that I'd like to bring up before we go into our Q&A, into our questions. Two issues. My hair.
I'm collecting.
Yes, you won. You win.
It was the shortest bet in the world.
Not really. I don't think had I not gotten sick, I don't. No, it's true. I blame my mother. She is the one. As soon as I came home, I think before we even got in the door. No, because a driver. But no. So it must have been on
Pick an excuse, any excuse you want.
On the phone.
I want my money.
On the phone, and as soon as I got home. Even though I was sick, I couldn't go right away.
Those of you that are watching, I want you to pay attention that I said that there was no way she wasn't going to color her hair. And so in the future, when she does something like this and I tell you how to bet, it's a sure thing.
Well, I think there were a lot of people that were on your side. They were betting on your side. But I do think that I would have been able to follow through longer. Let's not say like I would have succeeded, but I would have lasted longer had I not gotten sick. And my mom's perspective and mine at the time was I was so sick that anything to help me to feel better about my situation. I mean, it was not just physically sick. I felt really bad about the whole situation. Like, it was not a good situation.
If you hadn't got sick, I really believe you would have lasted at least a half an hour longer.
Come on. All right. So anyway,
maybe 45 minutes.
Obviously, I colored my hair, and of course, I cut it, and I'm really happy with it because I was able to go back to my hairdresser that I had here before we left. And any woman knows how important finding the right hairdresser is. So anyway, moving on to the next issue before we start the Q&A, my knee.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the issues that is preventing us from making plans to go back sooner is my knee issue. So
maybe you should talk about the history of your knee issue and, the years of running and whatnot.
Well, I've been a lifelong runner. I started running when I was in 3rd grade, CYO track. And so that has been a part of my life, my entire life, up until about 10 years ago, when the doctor told me I started to experience swelling when I would run. And I would run long distances, 5 miles, occasionally 10 miles. And my knee was swelling. And so I went and had an MRI, and he said that you can either keep running on it until you blow it out. I'll give you cortisone shots. That'll probably last you about 5 years, or you can switch to something that's more low impact. So I like swimming or cycling. So I started cycling. That's when I started cycling. I stopped running, which was, I remember being in the doctor's office and crying I'm an emotional person. Like when he told me, this was the issue and that I could keep running, but I was going to experience, pain. It's such a huge part. It was such a huge part of my life. So it was a significant blow to accept that. So I started cycling, and I've been cycling for at least 5 years. And then right before we left, it was starting to get to the point where I really needed to not cycle every day. I had really cut back, and that was helping. But I wasn't experiencing any pain just generally walking or going up and down the stairs or anything like that. So again, I wasn't anticipating that this was going to be an issue.
And keep in mind, we didn't know that there was no elevator in the apartment.
Right.
Or in any of the apartments.
So it was just this whole confluence of events that happened all at the same time. My knee progressively got worse as a result, I believe, of going up and down the stairs multiple times a day, every day.
And we were walking a lot,
too.
But the stairs, especially in the first apartment in Paris, were very steep and very narrow.
Yeah. So I am going to my first appointment. I had an appointment weeks ago, but the doctor, I guess, I don't know, had to go into the hospital. I don't know what happened, but he wasn't in the office, and so I had to reschedule it. So that's next week. And depending upon what the doctor says, this is a doctor that is a non-surgical approach. Like he's going to do everything possible not to do a knee replacement, but if I need one, I need one, and he'll be able to tell me that.
And that's why our next trip is scheduled in October.
So far out. Mm-hmm.
In anticipation of her needing that much recuperation. Mm-hmm. Now, if she doesn't need the surgery, we may take a trip in June mm-hmm. or some other time.
Right. So it's really hinging on what's going to need to be done about my knee. And honestly, I don't feel comfortable having that level of surgery, a knee replacement, done in France. I just, I don't even feel comfortable having it done here, let alone in France. So I'm going to a doctor that's been recommended by my parents because they both utilized him. My father's had 2 knee replacements, each knee. So he loves this guy. So I'm traveling to Vero Beach to see this doctor, even though we live 2 hours away. So that's the update on my knee.
Great. And the good news about your knee is since you're no longer going up and down the stairs, you actually don't have much pain, right?
No.
So
hardly at all. Every once in a while, my knee I'll stand a certain way and it'll buckle a little bit, but not the pain that I was having in France.
I think that that's indicative of not primarily not having to go up and down the stairs,
Sure.
Intensely like that.
Absolutely.
So maybe you won't have to have it.
Maybe not. We'll see. We'll find out. All right. You ready to move on to the Q&A?
I'm ready.
All right.
Let's go.
Let's go. This wasn't a question per se that we received from a viewer, but a suggestion.
Mm-hmm.
They suggested that we start a Facebook page and or a group where people can come and share information about their desire to move abroad, or if you've already moved abroad and you have information that you would like to share with people who are interested in moving abroad, that this is a place where people can come together in a community and share that information. So we have done that, and I haven't created a group, but I've created a page. So I will leave a link to that page in the description so that you can go ahead, and if you have information to share that other people can take advantage of, then please do that. So that's one thing that we've done in response to a viewer's request. So now the questions. Question number 1, and I have my list here, like right in front of us. We have our own, it's not really a teleprompter, but
it's a laptop.
It's our laptop that gives us the information, because we cannot remember all of this information. So the first question we have is, tell us some of the things you learned on your first move to France that will alter how you do things on your next trip. And for me, what I learned is to be prepared for homesickness, and yet, so the other thing that I learned, which wasn't really something new, I think we knew this about me, we just didn't really consider it. I don't really do well moving from place to place to place. I like to have stability, and I like to have a home base. And that's one of the reasons why predominantly the way that we historically have traveled is taking cruises.
Sure.
And one of the reasons for that is because I personally love just unpacking once and being able to go to multiple different locations instead of flying somewhere, staying at a hotel, then having to pack up, drive, or fly again. I just don't do well with that. So
and what you're mentioning in Paris, we kind of had that environment, right?
We did.
We had that environment where we got there, we unpacked, and then everything was within walking distance.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember being in Paris where we took a subway even once. We did when we went to Versailles when we were through Paris, but our base of operations in Paris was close enough to everything that we needed, and the things that were far away, those were the times we walked a long way.
Well, and I think that one of the things that we will do differently, that is something that we did that I think contributed to the struggle that I had, is moving from Paris to Versailles. And doing so, the reason I did that is because I wanted to stay within our budget, and we could not find a 2-bedroom apartment that was within our budget for that time period over Christmas and New Year's. So I made that decision, but yet now looking back on it, we paid a lot. Like, how much did we really pay for that move? I would have, now looking back, I would have paid the extra amount of money that it would cost us to stay in Paris and have the 2 bedrooms.
Think about just the Uber costs of taking the Uber to Versailles, the Uber to the airport to pick up Pierce that we wouldn't have had to take, the Uber back, the Ubers that we took in Versailles. We probably have $500 in Ubers alone, I would guess, right?
Yeah, I think so, with the different Ubers that we had to take to go,
sure,
because it was so remote.
Right.
I mean, remote is a little bit strong, but it was a lot more remote than being in the center of the hustle and bustle and being able to find everything and anything within walking distance.
And in Paris, everything was at the foot of our building.
Right.
Within 100 yards, we had McDonald's, Starbucks, probably 30 or 40 restaurants.
Talking about U.S. companies.
I know, but probably 30 or 40 local restaurants.
The things that were important to you.
In a 10-minute walk, we had the best bakery in Paris. Rated the best bakery in Paris.
And we also had cafes and restaurants right there at the base of the building. So homesickness, being more prepared for that. I think the moving contributed to the struggle with, that's my parents' clock, by the way. They have a bird clock. We are at my parents' right now because they are on a cruise themselves, and we are house sitting and babysitting their fur baby, their little cat Kino.
The most beautiful cat you ever saw.
Yeah. So we are watching the house and the cat.
And we're going to steal the cat.
No, we're not going. We're actually getting one of our cats back in a cup. For those of you who know, you know that we had to rehome our cats. We are getting one of our fur babies back in a couple of weeks. So I was saying the moving around, the homesickness. You know, so many people made great recommendations to us, like get involved in an expat group. And then there were other people that were totally against that. They were like, no, don't join an expat group. Try to, you know, make friends with Parisians, you know, people that you're going to be able to like assimilate into the culture better. And I don't think that those two things are mutually exclusive.
No, some of the expat groups are people that have become Parisians, right? So, in a sense, that are maybe American who have lived there 8 or 10 years. I know for me, I felt like I was a Parisian a couple of weeks in. I'm sure after 5 years, they feel like they're Parisians.
Yeah. And I think that there's something to be said to be a part of a group where you can have that Me Too experience. And they're sort of like your people, like they've done the same thing that we're doing, and they can give us advice and help and suggestions. Yet, the reason I didn't do that, because I thought about it in Paris, I even was given great suggestions from people of different groups to reach out to. It's because we were moving and we were going to be in Versailles for 2 months, and then we were going on to Nice. And I thought, well, I'm not going to get involved in a group if I'm moving around. I would rather wait until we know where we're going to end up and then. But that wasn't necessarily the best decision, because I think it is really invaluable to get connected with a group as soon as you're there, so that they can give you that support and help you through maybe the homesickness. That, you know, it's been great to get the feedback of people who have experienced homesickness, that so many people have shared with me, to know that it's normal, that most people, you know, I lived in Boca Raton for over 35 years, and to not anticipate that I would experience homesickness, I just didn't know. So being prepared for that, being prepared for the homesickness.
I have something very basic. We'll ask if there's an elevator in the building. We can't make that assumption in any part of France.
Oh my gosh.
We stayed in 3 places. We had 3 Airbnb type places, and none of them had elevators. Yet our previous 2 trips before that, both of them had elevators.
They both had elevators, so I didn't even think of it. I mean, I had people commenting like, why wouldn't you ask if there was an elevator? I'm like, I just assumed.
But if you remember in
there would be an elevator.
If you remember in our first trip, the tour guide told us that the peasants, the poor people, lived on the top floor. And we were like, well, that's completely the opposite than in the United States.
Right.
Well, now we know why.
Right. Like that's and if you are a fan of Emily in Paris, I think it's called, the first show addresses that when she moves to Paris and she has to go like all the way up to the top and there's no elevator. So I just didn't consider that.
Sure.
But definitely something that you want to keep in mind, whether that's France or anywhere else. There are these old buildings and they don't have elevators.
I think all through Europe it's like that.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, moving on to question number 2. The next question is, what do you think you could have done differently to lighten the homesickness? Well, first of all, for me, and then you can answer this obviously for yourself because I know what your answer is. But for me, I did not anticipate the homesickness. Like I said before, like if you had asked me before or even suggested that I would be homesick, I would be like, no way. Like, that is not going to happen. And so the thing that you can do, like I just suggested, is join a group or a church or some sort of organization where you're going to meet other expats, other Americans living abroad as soon as you get there.
Yeah, for me, you said you know what my answer is going to be. I didn't experience homesickness. Not a bit. I mean, I'm homesick now for Paris.
I know.
I'm not homesick for here, and that's not to say something bad about Florida. It's not that at all. In my life, I've traveled a lot. I've lived in different places. My career, as an example, I lived in Chicago and worked in Florida. And then another time I lived in Florida and worked in Columbus, Ohio. I did that for 2 years twice. So homesickness to me wasn't really a factor. So,
and that's not to say that we were not happy to see people and we didn't miss people. But
I was with the only person I wanted to be with anyway.
But our expectation too was that, and plans were already in the works for people to come and visit us. So,
right.
Yeah, so that wasn't something that I was concerned about, like not seeing people. I knew that we would see people, and I knew even with my parents. I mean, my parents are on a cruise. Like they're doing great, in great health, mentally, physically. So that wasn't a concern to me, even though I know that like my mom especially was feeling sad initially when we shared that we were making this move, but I knew that I would be able to come back in a heartbeat if something, if they needed me somehow.
And it's kind of ironic, I think, that before we left, your mother was afraid that we'd never talk to her or see her or anything like that. And about 10 days in, she said, I talk and see you more often than I did when you were home.
Yeah, because we taught her how to use WhatsApp, and we were doing WhatsApp videos.
Sure.
And and then all of a sudden another ironic part is the fact that I was so, feeling somewhat guilty, like being away from them, and thinking like, what if they need me to take care of something? And then I get sick and I come home and they take care of me. Yeah. So that was a little irony there. All right. You ready for the next question? Okay. So the next question is about cultural differences and any struggle learning the language.
Well, I can address that from my perspective. I had no struggle at all. And I'm being a little flippant in saying that. And then I didn't really try. I speak other languages like Italian and Spanish that I could use while I was in France, because there's a lot of Italians there, and a lot of words are similar. So I got by. It wasn't, should I have learned more? Of course I should have. Will I learn more? Of course I will.
Yeah.
And if we stay, for example, in Paris longer and become friendly and friends with Parisians, I'm sure they will force me to learn French.
They will.
And that's fine. But, it was not a struggle for me because I found a way to get by every time.
Yeah, and for me, I was engaging in courses. I had 2 courses that I was utilizing as resources at the time, but they were self-paced courses where I would watch videos, and it was really on me to take the time and to do it. So that was a bit of a struggle because we were so busy doing things. I always had an excuse as to why I didn't have time to.
But don't be so hard on yourself. You were using the language.
I was.
You were correcting me when I was trying. You were talking to people in French where you could. So I think you were doing pretty well.
I was making more of an effort than you were making.
Absolutely. Again, I was getting by, and that's,
Yeah. Now, though, in part because of suggestions by our viewers to utilize this time to learn French, that was something that was already a consideration, that was already on my mind, but I've actually taken the steps to sign up for a course that's a live course that you engage in twice a week for beginners, and that starts on April 17th. And I've also I also intend to sign Tony up as well. He has agreed to participate in this course. So we are on the path to learn more French.
Sure.
And like you said, I think that when we're over there, that gives us the opportunity to learn more and more. And it's definitely something that is a priority for us, because I know, being in the United States and meeting several people, you know, many people from different cultures and different countries that have come over here to live, that it is frustrating as an American when that person who's been here for 10 years still struggles with the language. And I think to myself, oh my gosh, you've been here for 10 years and you barely are able to speak English. Why? Why is that the case? And I think for the most part, because they are in a culture within their own culture.
Sure.
Right? They're living in an environment, in a community where they're engaging only with, the people within their culture.
I know somebody that's been here almost 70 years and barely speaks English now. For that exact reason.
Right.
So
yeah. So I get it. I understand. And I think we both absolutely want to become conversational at the bare minimum, living in an environment where everybody speaks French.
Sure.
All right. So I have to remind myself that
you talk too much.
That I talk too much. Yeah, I can go off on these tangents and just ramble, and then Tony's like,
I want to say something.
Can I please say something? So what are your thoughts about the culture in France?
Culturally, I was very pleasantly surprised. I do feel like if you treat people well, they'll treat you well, and we found that to be true. We did have really two experiences that you would call negative. And I was there 4 months. One was the Uber driver, that if you've read our blog, you've heard about that. When we were going from Paris to Versailles, we had an Uber driver who came to pick us up. We had probably 8 big bags, something like that.
Yeah. Well, between not suitcases, but between the 4 big suitcases, the 2 little suitcases, and then just bags of stuff that we were bringing.
Right. Mm-hmm. So when he came to pick us up, first of all, we had ordered the biggest car that was possible to order on Uber. It was a huge van.
A van.
A van that here would be an industrial van, I think. And so he pulled up, got out, saw our bags, and started laughing and scoffing at us. And that wasn't a good sign.
It wasn't a good first impression.
And then he tried to charge us more for the amount of luggage we had. Well, I wasn't near him when that happened. You were closer, and KJ was very assertive in her telling him that, why do you think we ordered such a big van? And then that was the end of the. He never said another word, and I don't think he spoke English well anyway. So he never said another word the whole trip to Versailles. So it was fine. That was maybe 30 seconds of a negative experience. So, but the second negative experience was a bit ironic. The 3 of us were shopping on a mall on a Sunday around Christmas time in Versailles, and Pierce and I were off walking together, because when you shop with her, she has to go off by herself. And Pierce and I were shopping together, and we were speaking English to each other, of course, because we don't speak French. So a Brit who was dressed very strangely, a Brit walked by and really chastised Pierce on his language. And I don't mean like he was cursing or anything. His language, in that his proper English syntax and whatnot. And Pierce speaks fine, by the way. He's a college graduate. He's getting a master's. He doesn't speak badly at all. But this guy had to make a point. And that was a much more negative experience. In fact, it bothered Pierce for the rest of the day.
It did bother him. But, I think that when you compare, this could happen anywhere.
Yes.
It happens everywhere and anywhere that you go. You're going to meet people who are wonderful and people who are rude.
Sure.
It happens in New York.
It happens in Boca. Go to a restaurant in Boca and see what you find.
Absolutely, it happens. So, does it happen in Paris? Maybe depending upon who you are and how you're I think how you treat them, like how you treat anyone, like how you treat others, you're going to get more of the same back. So,
and I try to take it a little bit one step further, a half a step further. I'm going to treat them well, and if they treat me bad, it's not on me, it's on them.
It's on them.
So why should I worry about it?
Yeah.
So
absolutely. Okay, moving on. Next question. What will you look for in an Airbnb after experiencing Airbnb hell?
An elevator.
An elevator. An elevator, and not much we can really give you relative to what to look for, except, look at the reviews. Absolutely 100% look at the reviews. Make sure that it's a place that I would recommend going with a premier host. Like there are people that earn a designation of being a premier host. And I know the property we stayed in Paris, they are premier hosts. I'm not sure that this place was. So absolutely, that's a key piece.
And ask questions.
Ask questions. Yeah.
Ask questions.
Okay. Does your visa expire now, and will you have to go through that process again? Yes, it will expire. One of the things that we learned through being there is that it's important to have an address. And even though they reach out to you via email, like you got your appointment request when you were in Nice, like right before you were about to come home.
Right.
So I think that once your visa does expire, and mine as well, we do have to renew that. But we've learned some things, and this is what I would recommend. This is what we're planning to do when we go back, is for Tony to renew his long-term visa. We're going to see when we go back in October if you're able to do that. I don't think you will be, because there's such a short time period between then and when the visa expires. So I think Tony's going to have to go through that process again. I'm not planning on going through the process because I will be able to leave the country and come back. Like I could just leave after 3 months, or, to renew that process on its own, like just by leaving the country and coming back.
And by the way, if you leave the country and go to Italy or Switzerland or Germany, you don't cross borders. You cross, there are borders, but there's no checkpoints, there's no passport stamps. So the French government has no way of knowing that. So to them, you got your passport stamped when you came in, and you're not getting your passport stamped again until you leave. So whatever happened in between, if that exceeds 3 months, you've exceeded your stay.
So yeah, because you are, for all intents and purposes, retired.
Right.
You have a couple of people, a few people, I should say, that you see online, because we're both psychotherapists. I'm not sure if people are aware of that. And I have pretty much a full caseload at this point. And I would like to be able to continue that over in France to a certain degree, maybe not a full caseload while I'm in France. And that's through online. And so there are some certain restrictions to that relative to having a retirement visa, or, going through the sort of the process of a work visa. It is very complicated because I'm not starting a business in France. That's not my intention. I'm not going to France seeking employment from a French company, but I would like to continue working for my company, and working with people online who are not French. They're not French people. So that was a bit of a sticking point of how that would all go.
And that we seem to be working our way through that.
Right. We're working our way through that. And I think approaching it from the perspective of Tony being the one with the long-term visa, and also, from what I understand, getting on the insurance as your spouse, I will be able to do that regardless of my visa.
Right.
That will be something that I'll be able to take advantage of.
I'd like to mention one other thing that I've learned since we came back. If you're an American and your passport expires soon, or you don't have a passport, don't wait till the last minute. Right now, the passport office is way backlogged because a lot of people let their passports expire with COVID because there's no travel happening. So even an emergency passport now that used to take a week is taking 6 weeks. Normal passport is taking 3 to 4 months. So, and they expect it to get worse than that because all the people that were working on passports when COVID happened, they moved them to other parts of the government so that they could keep them employed. Some retired and they didn't replace them. So there isn't as many people processing passports. So get it done. Get it done.
I know. He's talking to me because my passport actually expires in August. So.
And we're going in October.
So, but I'm taking care of it now. Like I'm going to do it now. We're in April, so I have plenty of time. But I will be doing that very soon. Now. All right. So I think those are all the questions that those are all the questions that we're going to address today, because otherwise this video already is going to be it's going to be pretty long. So again, just like so much gratitude for all of the people who have reached out and given us so much encouragement and support. And we will be bringing you videos from Boca. I'm still working on, providing some of the footage that Tony shot in Nice and some of the other footage that we've taken that we haven't shared yet. But the videos from Boca are coming.
And, I'd also like to say, read the blog. The blog, you're going to have a link to the blog, right? Read the blog. We keep the blog updated. We generally do an update about once a week. We just posted something, right?
Yep.
About me in retirement.
That struggle.
Yeah. And we respond to every single email we get. So please send us emails. I've got a whole bunch of people now that we're emailing back and forth like we're old friends. And that's terrific.
Yeah.
So please communicate with us.
And if you have not received a response to an email that you've sent, send another email, because emails there's the chance that it could get lost in the sea of emails that we get.
One person with me, my response went to their spam folder and they didn't realize it. So if you haven't gotten one from us, check your spam folder.
Check your spam folder. Yeah. And then also we invite you to share any information, experiences, information, resources that you may have if you're someone who has already moved abroad or you're interested in moving abroad and you're engaged in this process as well, because that helps us. It helps other people who are watching and reading. And then, of course, we just started the new Facebook page, which you can engage in a community with other people who have similar interests and goals.
Right.
So that's available to you. And then finally, if you haven't yet subscribed to our channel, click that red subscribe button, and be sure to click the bell when it pops up, because that means that you will get all of the notifications when we launch our videos.
Great.
So thanks for watching today, and we'll see you again next time.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.